Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the growing role of data in retail. We're so glad that you could all join us today. We're going to be talking about how local brands are evolving their businesses to incorporate the use of data in their decision-making and overall business strategy and growth. My name is Niamh McLean, and I am the Head of Partnerships here in Incubeta, South Africa. In my role, I'm really lucky to be able to work across our entire client base. And in the last 2 years in particular, I've really been excited to see how brands are better harnessing the power of data so that they can future-proof their businesses and deliver more rewarding and engaging experiences to their customers. Before we dive into the content for today, I just wanted to run you through how the event's going to take place, our agenda, and introduce our speakers, starting with Jade Arenstein. She is Incubeta's Global Service Lead for Analytics, Data, and BI. Jade's going to be giving us an introduction to the topic of the growing role of data in retail and discussing the changes in online shopping behavior since the pandemic. She's going to share her views on how to manage a retail strategy in a privacy-first way and how to harness the power of data in your retail strategy for 2022 and beyond. Then we're going to hand over to Pranav Prakash, Google's industry manager for Sub-Saharan Africa. Google's retail industry manager for Sub-Saharan Africa, I should say. Pranav is going to share his insights that reflect the state of the retail industry globally and the implications that this has on businesses. So from a South African perspective, he's got examples of strategies that local brands are leveraging to adapt to consumer behavior changes and confidently cater to the massive e-commerce and omni-channel growth opportunities in this region. And then to conclude our speaker lineup for the day, we're going to be joined by Charles Nzimande. Charles is Pepkor's digital platform strategist. And he is going to be talking about how to harness the power of data in retail and unpack Pepkor's ambitions as well as their data-driven marketing solutions. Throughout our session, I would really encourage you to interact with us via our chat function, which you'll find in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. We also have a questions tab where you can access through the menu bar, and I would encourage you to ask as many burning questions as you have, because we are going to have a panel discussion at the very end. And then also we've got a couple of polls that we're going to be asking you today, and you can access the polls section within that kind of chat menu area. So as I said, we're going to have a panel discussion at the end, so don't forget to ask all of your burning questions. However, first of all, to kick us off, I'm going to ask you to go and locate the first poll. And the question we wanted to ask you this morning is, what is most important to you when it comes to online shopping? Is it that you're looking for a trustworthy brand? You're looking for an effective checkout experience, low delivery fees, secure online pay gate system, easy return policy, convenience, targeted buying, or access to support? So let's see how, I'm going to have a look and see how that's looking. And please do vote. I'm actually going to vote myself while we're here. While you're voting there, just to let you know that Incubeta Global, actually, we recently ran on a global perspective an online shopping survey, and this was one of the questions posed in that particular survey. So it's going to be really interesting to see the answers that we see here from a South African perspective in the context of global trends. We don't have the results yet, but when they do come in, we'll certainly be having a look. And if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about that event, it is going to be taking place on 17th of March. It's called Successful Strategies for a New Era of E-commerce, and you can go to the incubeta.com website and register. If you happen to be Irish like me and you're out celebrating St. Patrick's Day on that day, don't worry, that it will be available on demand, so don't forget to register. So looking at the results of the poll, it's actually quite split. Unsurprisingly, as I would have said, we've got convenience coming in top at 20% of voters. And then just behind that, trustworthy brand at 19%, then again, just behind that, the secure online pay gate system at 18%. And then it kind of drops. 13% are saying easy returns policy, 12% low delivery fees, 8% effective checkout, 6% access to support, and 2% targeted buy. So actually, yeah, now it's trustworthy brand and convenience are tied at 20%. So quite interesting. I don't think particularly surprising there, but the low delivery fees at 12%, an easy returns policy, effective check. I actually would have thought effective checkout would have been higher than 8%, but anyway. Yeah, I guess trustworthy brands and convenience are topping the reasons for online shopping. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Jade Arenstein. As she's getting ready, just want to tell you a little bit more about Jade. Her focus is on driving data and analytics best practices for both Incubeta, the Incubeta group, and her clients globally. With experience across media management via GMP, Google Analytics, data analysis tracking, and digital marketing strategy, Jade's passion lies in being able to harness data and analytics in order to drive data-driven, data-centric, and multi-channel strategies to meet and beat her clients' marketing and business needs. At this point, welcome, Jade.
Thank you, Dee, and thanks so much for the introduction. So today, in the next 15 minutes, I'll be covering the impact of COVID-19 on retail and how to best use data for an e-commerce strategy given the post-pandemic environment, and how to maintain retail in a privacy-first era. So before we start, I'd like to ask you a question. Yes, another question, and I'd like you to please go to the poll again. I want to know, have you started shopping online more since the pandemic started? Please will you take a few seconds to answer this? It is just a yes or no question. Okay, perfect. So for the 76% of you who said yes, you're absolutely not alone in this. This graph shows the interest in the search term online shopping over the last 5 years from Google search in South Africa. And to contextualize this graph, a score of 100 shows maximum interest in a keyword during the time period. So over this 5-year period, there was a spike to about 90 in 2017, but in a week in 2020, there was a spike to 100, showing that the keyword online shopping reached maximum interest from searchers in South Africa. Can you guess which week this was? If you guessed the last week of March, you are correct. And coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, the spike in interest occurred right after our first lockdown started on the 27th of March, after it was announced on the 23rd. So now before we carry on, I just want to warn you that I'm about to throw some numbers at you, and I need you to please stay with me as I paint a picture of what our current retail landscape looks like. So online retail grew from 1.4% of total retail sales in 2018 to 2.8% in 2021. And this has largely been attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic. And to prove this point, Google and Kantar did a study where they confirmed that COVID-19 was definitely a contributing factor, where they found that 67% of consumers stated that they had started shopping online more during the pandemic. And good news for online retailers, 87% of these consumers say that they'll continue to shop online post the pandemic. And to look at offline revenue and offline retail, Nielsen did a study in 2021 and found that there's been a significant decrease in the frequency that South Africans are going to brick and mortar stores during the pandemic, and especially amongst the LSM 9 to 10 portion of the population. So if we zone in on this 9 to 10 LSM population, we can see that pre-COVID in 2019, these consumers were going to the shop 7.4 times a month. During the peak of COVID in 2020, this decreased to 6.1 times per month. And in 2021, this further decreased to 5.3 times per month. I'm sure knowing our own behavior, this probably isn't such a surprise. But now if we look at how people are behaving online and offline and making their purchasing decisions, a study done by Google, same study as before, found that there's been major shifts in this behavior between 2019 and 2020. So what we can see is that a number of people making buying decisions purely offline, that number of people has decreased substantially. And if we look at people making and buying decisions online and offline, this has increased even more. So there's definitely a trend to people making decisions, doing research online and purchasing offline, or doing research offline and purchasing online. And there's a much bigger interaction between the two. Another factor of the landscape is that mobile is now playing an even larger role in the consumer's research phase of their purchase journey. 77% of consumers used mobile as part of their research process in 2020, compared to 66% in 2019. And adding to this, a study done by Geopol in February 2020 found that 45% of South Africans browse the internet on their mobile for more than 4 hours a day, so more than half of the working day. And that 70% of the country has access to the internet via their cell phones alone. So no access to desktop, only access to the internet via their mobiles. And lastly, in a survey done by Deloitte, and this is actually interesting given the previous poll done by Neve, they found that the following 7 factors are most important to users when shopping online. To this group of participants in the survey, an effective checkout stood as the most important factor. But the other factors that came out top was low delivery fees, a trustworthy brand, just like you guys, and access to and support from support services, as well as secure online payment facilities. So to summarize all these numbers, just so I haven't lost anyone, I just want to give you a brief summary of the 5 points. So online retail revenue has doubled since 2018, and 67% of consumers started shopping online since the pandemic. Consumers are going to brick and mortar stores less often. Consumers have shown a preference to shop both online and offline, and mobile has become an even more integral part of the consumer journey in South Africa. A seamless checkout is rated the most important factor of a user's online experience. So with all the change in store behavior and users becoming more comfortable shopping online, there are definitely major opportunities for retailers to capitalize on e-commerce. With the right strategy and access to data, retailers should be able to slot into the gaps in the user's new shopping behavior to drive more sales online. So now let's talk about how we can actually do this from a data perspective to drive more sales through an e-commerce strategy. In order to capitalize on the full user journey between online and offline, and to make the most out of the increased interest in online purchasing, while still fulfilling a user's desire to continue shopping offline, we need to start to employ an omni-channel marketing strategy. Omni-channel marketing has become a digital buzzword, with very few brands actually successfully implementing the strategy. So let's talk about what it actually is. So to give you a dictionary definition, omni-channel marketing is the integration and cooperation of the various channels organizations use to interact with customers, with the goal of creating a consistent and seamless brand experience for the user of the channel, whether that channel is online or offline. Omni-channel marketing is best executed when the consumer is at the center of the strategy. So how do you execute this practically from a data perspective? First, you need to collect your data. You need to assess what data you have both online and offline. There are key requirements that you need to consider for your online and offline data collection, and let's start with online first. First, you need to have a functional e-commerce data layer across your full sales funnel and your website, which will allow you to track important e-commerce information, including transaction IDs, product information, sales, and revenue. Next, you need to build in login functionality on your website. And alongside this, you need to be able to track a user ID when a user signs up or signs in to make a purchase. This user ID will need to serve as the join key between your online data and your offline data. For your online data, you'll need to have a data warehouse or CRM where you collect offline purchase data at a user level with a unique user ID for each user. And this user ID needs to match the user ID generated on your website. A hashed email address works really well for generating a common user ID between your website and your CRM. And a loyalty program is a great way of collecting user information in a store. Last, you'll also need to track behavioral data about your users with data like the date of last purchase, the frequency of your users' purchases, as well as price sensitivity and preferred purchases or purchase categories based on the types of items that your users like to purchase. So once you have all of your data in one place in Google Analytics and your offline data warehouse or CRM, you'll need to connect the two together to create one online and offline data set. Google BigQuery is a data warehouse that works seamlessly with the Google stack and connects to Google Analytics 360 for those that have a license, or Google Analytics 4 for those that do not, for activation in your campaigns. The ideal connected ecosystem will include automation of the data flows from your offline platforms into BigQuery. Connecting your data will give you a full view of how your users are interacting with your brand online and offline, how your marketing activities are leading to offline sales and visits, and how your website and your users' browsing behavior are contributing to overall sales. Lastly, you need to activate your data to build powerful audiences and offline signals. Once your data is connected, you'll need to activate it so you can actually use the data in your campaigns and speak to your users in a meaningful way. Useful offline and online audiences for an omnichannel approach could include the following. So first, we'll look at purchases. This is a list of people that have purchased specific products or product categories, either online or offline. This is best used for exclusion purposes so that you don't end up remarketing a product that a user has already bought, because I think we all know how annoying that can be. And then we also have high and low frequency purchases. So this is a list based on online and offline purchasing intervals and is best used to market to users at the right time according to their buying habits. The next one would be a high lifetime value users. So this is a list of users who have a high potential value to your business so that you can target them at a higher frequency with stronger messaging. And next, we can look at users who have purchased any amount of days ago. So whether it's 30 days ago, 6 months, 1 year, it fully depends on your purchase cycle. But this is really one of the best ways to drive a repeat purchase according to your own purchase cycle. And then last, we have high intent users. And this is a user who's shown interest in a product, but not purchased it yet. And this can be used to remarket accordingly to actually drive the purchase. So a key component of activating your data and a successful omnichannel experience is a strong and data-driven set of creatives that speak to each audience bucket. Remember that this is ultimately the only element of your campaign planning that we all know can take months that the user will actually end up seeing. So it is really, really important to invest in this step. So to look at your website, this is another key component of an omnichannel and customer-centric experience. Your website needs to be treated as you would treat any brick and mortar store where you want to give your customers the best possible service that you can. Users want a seamless, stress-free, and easy experience on your site on their device of choice, especially when it comes to checkout. So your Google Analytics reports have a huge amount of data that you can use to actually make this experience better. So this is looking at an e-commerce report, looking at the checkout funnel. And basically what you can do is use this report to identify potential breaks in the checkout process that might cause a user to drop off. In this example, we can see that there's been a 34% drop off at the delivery step of the checkout. So maybe this is a sign that the delivery fee is potentially too high, and this is discouraging users from actually completing their checkout. So I just want to make it clear that this data is available to anyone that does have an e-commerce data layer on their website and is using analytics alongside it. So once you do identify there's a problem, I would recommend using a CRO specialist, so a conversion rate optimization specialist, to identify what is causing the break in the checkout journey, and then to run experiments based on their hypothesis in order to fix the issues. Optimizing your website for conversions can increase your conversion rate drastically, which will result in more revenue online, especially if you focus on correcting the journey for the users who are actually wanting to purchase. And then lastly, make sure that your website is optimized for both desktop and mobile in a way that users have the exact same experience on any device. This will not only allow you to reach a larger percentage of the population, but will also allow you to drive more sales once your brand becomes 100% accessible to all. So for the last part of my presentation, I'll be discussing the current and upcoming changes to the privacy regulations and requirements and what you can do to maintain performance in your retail campaigns despite this. So what is actually going on? I think everyone has been hearing a lot about data privacy, cookies falling away and all of that, but I just want to summarize the situation as quickly as I can. So users are basically expecting a lot more privacy from brands. It's been happening over the last few years. We all want more transparency, choice, and control over how our data is used. And browsers and governments have started to respond accordingly, with browsers restricting the use of third-party cookies and mobile operating systems restricting the use of device identifiers. Governments and lawmakers have also increased the restrictions on the use of personal data and put in place additional requirements around user consent through acts like GDPR in Europe and POPI in South Africa. Due to these regulations and updates from browsers, we are seeing the following. Websites are having to put consent banners on their websites, giving users the option to opt out of being tracked by first and third-party cookies. This results in us as advertisers having a limited view of measured conversions and giving us less conversion data to work with in our campaigns and our reporting. There are many implications, of course, for marketers with these changes, but here are some of the main ones. So firstly, we will have less access to data for advertising targeting and less control over personalized website experiences. We will also be limited in our ability to track conversions, create audiences, and trust attribution models. So this isn't to say we won't be able to create audiences at all. It's just that the size of the audiences we want to create will become a lot smaller. It will also become more difficult to track media performance across channels and platforms. So what can you actually do? Google has developed a lot of tools to help advertisers get ready for these privacy changes, and these tools include, so the first one would be Google Analytics 4, which is the latest version of Google Analytics, which has built-in machine learning to fill in the gaps in the data that we expect to see due to people opting out. It also has features to protect users' privacy, such as IP address hiding. The next tool they have put in place is consent mode via Google Tag Manager. This is quite a complex topic, so without getting into too much detail, consent mode helps you model your conversions based on how many users opt out. And the last tool, which is really easy to implement, is enhanced conversions, which is available through Google Ads and Google Tag Manager, and also allows you to maintain a higher level of conversion tracking using Google's technology and backend data. The second thing, and this could be one of the most important, this is the most important and probably one of the biggest shifts and changes for a lot of brands, but it's something that definitely needs to start being done a lot more, and this would be to invest in your CRM, as well as the teams and agencies to help you build it out into an invaluable database of first-party data using the tips that I spoke about earlier, which would be collecting the user ID and tracking that behavioral data. Having a strong CRM will allow you to connect your offline CRM data to your online data to drive this omni-channel strategy. Your CRM data can also be used for generating really useful and strong customer match lists across most platforms as well, which also would include your display platforms and Facebook. And then lastly, update the targeting of your display and social campaigns to be less reliant on third-party cookies. Put more focus on contextual targeting, so keyword and site targeting, and less focus on third-party audiences, which would be your affinity and your in-market Google audiences. And to close off, I just need to say it's all going to be okay. Find and work with a data and media partner that you trust to guide you through all the changes and stay up to date with industry leaders for news on upcoming changes and developments. And please feel free to reach out to us after this with any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jade. Yes, there we are. Thank you, Jade. That was really interesting and really practical. For me in particular, so many useful and practical tips and advice of what brands can be doing to plan for all of the upcoming changes and everything. I thought it was great, so thank you. To have a poll, but due to time constraints, we're actually going to skip right over that and go straight to Charles. And I was just going to say now, you know, the point you were making at the end there about digital transformation, digital maturity, and how it's needed at an organizational level in terms of sponsorship and buy-in in order to drive it. It is the perfect segue into our next speaker, Charles, because Charles is digital platform specialist with Pepkor, and within Pepkor, he kind of champions digital maturity within the group. He's responsible for steering Pepkor's digital narrative and driving highly effective even digital campaigns by harnessing the power of data and analytics to drive business success across the group and the group's brands. He's a digital native and he's passionate about all things digital and has taken a keen aptitude for its byproducts such as data. He enjoys integrating digital assets and connecting the dots that may sometimes seem invisible. And I also need to add on as well is that I had the honor, I'll say, of working with Charles for a few years. He's an ex-Incubeta employee and he was there when I started a few years back. So he is a really great person to work with, passionate about what he does. And on that point, I'm going to hand over to Charles.
Thank you, Neve. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege for us to be invited to participate here today. And hopefully what we impart with you, what we share with you is going to resonate. So we're going to be talking about harnessing the power of data in retail. So this is an order of the things that we are going to look at. Our data ambitions is Pepkor, the solution, how we look at unlocking value and realizing that value. One of our challenges is that we have 1 million of customers within Pepkor, and we know a significant amount of those about our customers. We know about their basket behaviors. We know about their cross-shopping behaviors as well. But a large part of that centers around their offline behavior. So how do we then bring that on board to digital? I'm not going to answer that just as yet. The second challenge is not going to be foreign, and I imagine that it affects almost everybody on this call, is around the disappearance of third-party cookies. So this has, it's been timely that we've started to look at a marketing tech solution since about 4 years ago. And it has now become front and center of our strategy of looking at first-party data. What is our ambition as Pepkor? Fundamentally, we want to activate digital marketing best practices across our entire group through the use of a unified ad marketing tech solution. And this, in essence, is what having a solution such as Google Marketing Platform enables us to do. So, we want to have a best-in-class technology solution. We want to be able to use advanced features in order to be able to activate audience targeting strategies. We want to be able to centralize measurement so that across the entire group, we are able to have a collective and shared view of measurement. And we want to be able to implement data fidelity so that we ensure that there's no data that's lost between our platforms. Our omni-channel strategy centers around online and offline, the integration of the two. And this is one of the things that we spend an insurmountable amount of time obsessing about, trying to bring into play, in addition to just think about them. Why the integration of the two? So one of the things that we've been doing for a long time in our group has been to build a construct of a single view of the customer. But that single view of the customer is largely focused on the offline world. Now, making use of a ad marketing technology solution such as GMP enables us to then create a complementary single view of all paid media, which then extends itself to building a single view of a digital customer. Making use of one ecosystem means that we can optimize all of our digital marketing channels in a seamless manner by sharing insights and activating those insights as well. It means that we also have full transparency of all of our media, have full access to it, and then have full control over it as well. It further means that we are able to implement efficiencies on how our spend is utilized across the diverse set of media channels by having a consolidated view. It means, naturally, that in a privacy-first world that we are now in, means that we keep all of our information secure. How do we then unlock the value? In unlocking the value, we're going to look at the 3 pillars under audiences, attribution, and creative. Let's dive into having a look at audiences. As I mentioned much earlier, our focus is now turned on its head. We are obsessed about having a clear and concise first-party data strategy. Having that first-party data strategy will enable us to collect and combine business as well as marketing data to give a really true single view of the Pepkor citizen and make it available to the group. It enables us to make sure that we analyze the metrics that matter for the business and surface those insights. It means further that we are able to actually activate the insights in an automated and scalable way. How do we then realize the value for the business? It means that fundamentally we're able to align all the teams across all of our businesses around the notion of privacy first and a consolidated measurement across the group. It means fundamentally that we are able to augment what we know about our customer from an offline point of view with what we know from a digital point of view. It means that we are able to activate first-party data by building pipelines that enable us to share audiences between different business tools and our digital marketing channels as well. Omnichannel attribution is a naturally very important topic to us. Google had a stat in one of their Think with Google articles that says that 75% of all in-store purchases are influenced by online media. We fundamentally believe in that stat and are almost of the view that it could be largely understated. With all of our campaign activities, we endeavor to try to bring in an element of what happens in the store. We are also very deliberate in ensuring that our efforts are also focused on driving fit to store, which makes sense if you consider that we've got a large footprint of physical stores across all of our markets, spanning just under 5,000 stores. So at every turn, we try to push traffic to not just our digital channels, but to actually influence it to the stores, which then makes data-driven attribution even more important. Last click attribution, yes, some people still consider it, but for us, data-driven attribution is of significant value, simply because we can't say that we are trying to merge online as well as offline, but only consider last click, which then only takes some of the credit to some of the channels, but we are actually concerned about the full scope of how our channels perform. We are also obsessing about automating buying strategies against customer value segments. It's not just a blanket approach for us. If we are going to get the value of the insights from the digital channels that we use through GMP, it only makes sense that we talk to customers in a segmented way. GMP fundamentally enables us to achieve a lot through data-driven creative solutions. How does it do this? One of the things that we are big on across our group is an element of cost saving. With cost savings, we always reason that it enables us to lower our customers' prices. We pass on that value to the customers at every turn. So GMP enables us to introduce efficiencies by creating creative production workflows. It helps us to kill functional silos that have existed for a long time between media and creative teams by bringing those two together, which in turn actually enables us to respond to customer behaviors in a more real-time manner. We also are able to benefit from the frameworks and the templates as well as the dynamic rules, which enable us to scale our activities further. We're going to look at how we realize the value through GMP. It enables us to really implement best practice for digital marketing across the group by bringing all teams together and ensuring that all the learnings are visible and shared across all of the businesses. It enables us to ensure that measurement is consistent throughout, that we all have a shared understanding of all the necessary metrics. It enables us to have a firm grip on all of our data and to ensure that all of our audiences are utilized in a secure manner and are utilized correctly as well. And that is our story for today. And again, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to participate.
That was great, really interesting, and I'm very excited to see the journey, the continuation of the journey that Pepkor is on, and the realization of all of the various, I guess, work streams that you have in play over the coming years. And it's so great to see how you're future-proofing for the future of digital retail, both offline and online, and across all the various brands and work streams. But at this point, I'm going to welcome back Jade and Pranav to your screens because it's time for our panel discussion. And Jade and Pranav and Charles are going to be joined by Rowan McIntosh and Chelsea Owens. Chelsea will join them on the panel, and Rowan's going to be asking the questions, a lot of which I've seen coming through on the chat and sent through in advance. So there's some really nice ones that the panel are going to answer. Just to give a quick intro as to who our new faces are, Rowan is our MD. He's responsible for Incubeta, Middle East and Africa. He joined us in May 2019. I do remember it was the 15th of May. It was a Wednesday, random fact. And he joined us after spending 11 years at WPP's Global Marketing Technology Consultancy Arm Acceleration, where he was Group Business Director. Chelsea is one of our business unit directors and has experience both on client-facing and agency roles. She's been with Incubeta for 7 years, having originally joined as an account manager. That was, I think, in May 2015, if I recall. Don't know the exact date of that one, but I think it was May. She's worked across a range of industry verticals, including education, finance, retail, telecoms, travel, and e-commerce. And she's currently leading our e-commerce and retail business unit. So you won't find anyone, trust me, you're not going to find anyone who gets more passionate about delivering results for her clients. Over to you guys.
Thanks so much, Neve. After an introduction like that, I don't think I can't ask the first question of Chelsea. And especially just to kind of get her voice in the room, you've heard from the other three. But I think, Charles, the first question that I want to ask is, it's quite a generic one, but why would you say data is so important in retail?
I think it's looking at it that the devil is in the data, and it's gone of the days of spray and pray, and data should inform every marketing effort that is made, and it allows marketers to have a laser focus in their targeting, and more importantly, it helps reduce the spend wastage. Charles spoke to this earlier about media consolidation, and most importantly, when looking at your data and your audience segments, you can then measure that impact back to business. When applying it within a digital space, everything is measurable. How valuable are those segments to us? How are we talking to them, and how are they responding with the tailored approach that we're taking towards those segments? So is it important? I would say it should be top of your priority, and especially if you're playing in the online space and putting any digital spend behind your marketing efforts.
Cool. Thanks, Charles. I think we all agree on this esteemed group that data is important, and that's kind of why we're having this thing. So it's great to get a coalface view of some of these things working with our clients. I think I'm going to stick with that theme, and there was a question that came through from the audience from Tian towards Charles. You mentioned some of those changes that you've made within the Pepkor business. The question from Tian is, how have all of these changes impacted your mROI, and what has the impact been by shifting the business to this kind of thinking and way of operating?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to try and not be lengthy, and also I'm going to try and not be vague. So do correct me if I am being vague. It's a difficult one to answer. It's a simple question with a simple answer, but it's a difficult one to answer simply because one of the impediments that we have has been around change management. The adoption of digital, it's now happened. There's a full-on buy-in in the business. Now with the buy-in, it's you'll take note that when I addressed the online and offline merge earlier, I said we are very deliberate about proving value to the offline world. So what we try to do there is we try to show ROI across the board, not just on the digital channels, because what we've tended to see happen a lot of the times is that people are concerned with just pushing traffic to the digital channels, but actually we've got a large footprint and we are continuing to open stores, and we must be deliberate in showing the business that actually we are sending the traffic to the stores. And we've developed a couple of measures, without being very specific on those, of trying to identify customers that end up in the stores so that we can then translate that value back to the business.
Cool, Charles. I think it's really exciting times in it sounds like in your company, and I know that these things don't happen overnight, right? So it's very, what's the word? Encouraging, I guess, to hear that you know, when you apply yourself and you do bring some of these things to bear, that there are some real value or tangible value points that you can bring back into the business. So thank you for that. I think I'm going to shift tack a little bit just to give everyone a bit of airtime, I guess. So Pranav, in your presentation, you touched on the importance of digital transformation, and I think it ties nicely to Charles's mentioning how this has impacted the organization on a broader level. What would you say the biggest challenge is in terms of getting digital transformation right within brands?
Perfect. Thanks a million for that question. I'd say it's a really tall order because the default assumption, the intuitive assumption, if you will, is that digital transformation is the imperative of the digital team within an organization, right? And if you're part of a large organization, then you have a large e-commerce team and you have a large digital team, and you think that by and large, most of the work that needs to be done to advance your digital maturity or take your organization through a digital transformation process has to be done by these teams. From what I've seen, that is not only untrue, but I think some of the biggest roadblocks to being able to achieve that digital transformation actually come from organization-related challenges, right? So having executive buy-in, somebody who can champion the initiative across different organizational silos. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the digital team, who are likely the experts in laying out a digital transformation roadmap, might be able to put all the details on paper in an extremely prudent and thoughtful way. But to actually be able to use that and drive it to execution, you're going to need somebody who is batting on your behalf, convincing your web development teams to make changes on your site or on your app as required, convincing your e-commerce teams to change their promotional or pricing strategies based on some of the data-driven insights that you're able to leverage, and a whole bunch of other things that are going to necessarily require that you transcend these organizational silos. And so that, and I think in a word, organizational roadblocks would be the biggest challenge, really being able to execute a digital transformation roadmap and be able to see yourself successfully making progress in that journey. I think you need to be able to bring stakeholders in your organization that don't necessarily deal with digital or e-commerce teams on a day-to-day basis on board with the need to take your organization through this kind of a journey. And I think it becomes it becomes relatively easy to make that case when you're just talking about numbers. I think when we talk about the digital transformation program, for instance, we've seen that with the study with the Boston Consulting Group that I'd referenced earlier, typically we see that companies were able to advance their maturity along the maturity curve, are able to realize about, I believe, 20% higher revenues and 30% stronger bottom lines as a result of that transformation. So it's not a hard case to make, but it does become difficult to convince the right stakeholder to come on board and really sponsor these initiatives.
That's very interesting. So it sounds like the kind of key challenge is making sure that the right stakeholders are along for the journey. But it's kind of one of those chicken and egg things, because once you do it, the results kind of speak for themselves. But to get people to buy in, you kind of need to have that success up front. So I get that it can be a bit of a challenge, but that's very interesting. Thanks for that. I'm going to stick with you, Pranav, because there's been a follow-on question from Natalie Boyce. Just saying, we sell FMCG with retailers who own the data, which leaves us in a difficult position when it comes to measuring success of our digital media spend. So are there any thoughts for a small brand looking to grow and to use digital transformation as that kind of North Star?
This is unfortunately something that I might have to be a little more vague than Charles intended to be, for example, because I don't think that is a specific product that, at least from a Google perspective, that I can talk about that has really nailed this, right? I think in the past, we've tried a few things. I think you may have heard of something called, different variations of supplier-funded campaigns, and I think the specific product from a Google perspective was called shopping campaigns with partners. And I think it created the infrastructure for you to, at least insofar as we're talking about your marketing that goes through the Google marketing platform, you can integrate this kind of data and do it in a privacy safe way for all three parties involved to really be able to match the right kinds of data and to then be able to draw insights and to essentially power your marketing campaigns on the basis of that. Now, unfortunately, it's not a product that exists right now. So we've also been dabbling in the space to make it as easy and convenient for advertisers as possible. But having said that, essentially the way we're looking to solve it is from a scalable perspective, right? How can it work from an SMB which has 10 employees to a large organization which has 5,000 or 20,000? But I think from your own brand's point of view, if there are ways that you can come to agreements or partnership with these suppliers that you're talking about, and assuming there isn't a large number of suppliers or the most significant part of your business comes from only a handful of suppliers, if you can have some kind of a data sharing agreement with them, then I think that would be the single most effective way for you to address this in the short term. And then while I make no promises from a professional perspective, I think my personal belief is that pretty soon we are going to be able to have products that might be able to solve this in a scalable fashion, regardless of the size of your business. So maybe we'll just have to hold on for that for a little bit.
Okay, so it sounds like that's quite a sort of known industry challenge, and we possibly don't have the tools just yet, but with collective minds trying to solve these problems, I'm sure we'll have something of tangible value soon. So thanks so much, Pranav, for that insight. Jade, I think I'm going to come to you next. So I know we saw in the poll originally that like a trustworthy brand is key to sorry, I'm reading the wrong question. I've lost my way here. One of the key takeaways in your presentation, Jade, was to talk about decreasing the reliance on third-party data. So, but we also know that at the same time, with privacy and data legislation coming out like POPI and GDPR, that first-party data collection is obviously becoming harder. So it's kind of this difficult situation where you need to reduce your reliance on third-party, increase first-party collection, but that first-party collection is becoming harder. How do brands get around that?
So I think the main thing is just to consistently remain respectful to your consumers. So always ask for consent. So whether it's online, on your website, you ask consent to track information. And if it's in store, you need to say, like, I want to track this data. Is it okay with you? And also want to use it for X, Y, and Z. Like, you need to be very specific in terms of what you're doing with the data. So it's not really a case of you can't collect the data. It's just that you need to be able to ask for consent, and it needs to be used for the purpose it's being collected for, especially from a GDPR perspective. From a POPI perspective, it's more around getting consent for like direct marketing mostly. So on websites, I think everyone would have seen I opt in to getting communication, and everyone now has the right to opt out of being tracked. So everyone has the right to call up a brand and say, please remove my details from your database. I don't want to be contacted anymore. So that's really what POPI is about. So yeah, I mean, it is definitely becoming harder because people obviously now have the right to say no, but it's really just asking them and then being clear about what you are using the data for and what you want to do with it.
Okay, so I think it's clear that, you know, transparency and all of these things is quite key, and gone are the days where we could just collect data and play Big Brother in the background. You know, we need to take some ownership there and let people know what's happening. I want to continue with you, Jade. There was a slightly more technical question that came in from Tony Lopez around, do we need to move to server-side tracking due to the cookie and Chrome changes that are coming in soon?
So Tony, it's not required at all, but it definitely would make your tracking more durable if you do. So the benefits of server-side tracking is really improved website performance because you have less tags on your site. And obviously a lot of tags can slow your site down. It doesn't happen in all instances, but it is possible. As well as better security of your visitor data, because this data is processed in a cloud instance before it is routed to the tags, and basically, well, for the tags to fire and for the data to be tracked. So to actually start with server-side, what you need to do is basically set up a server-side GTM container in GTM and on your server side, and then start exporting migrating rather some of your client tags to the server-side container. So currently Facebook, Google, and Google tags are supported. So that would be your Google Ads, your floodlights, and your GA tags. And measurement protocols also is currently supported in the server-side container as well. So definitely, as I said, it's not required, but it is recommended, and it's definitely one of the best solutions to drive durable tracking once everything starts to change with cookies.
Thanks, Jade. Some of that went completely over my head, but I'm sure some people on the call understood what you were saying. And yeah, if you do have some questions around the technical nature of that, we're obviously very happy to help out on that. Charles, I want to come back to you quickly. And this is the one I started reading out earlier for Jade, but we saw in the poll that a trustworthy brand is really key to online purchasing. And we also saw from Pranav that the customer loyalty is on the decline as they become sort of spoiled for choice, right? So I guess this is possibly a challenging question, but how do you build trust and a mutual benefit between the consumer and the brand?
I'll give a simpler answer first. So we've got a number of obviously household brands, right? But we approach that question from a different perspective. It simply starts with visibility. So if you are not participating in the auction, for example, in Google search, you're not found, you're not considered. They know you, but they don't know you for the things that they're looking for at that time. That's one of the ways in which we approach that trust, because they already know that we are a significant brand. They already know what products we carry, but in as far as those products relate to their needs, but the needs are never constant. Rather, the needs are constant, therefore forever changing. So the challenge is, how do you ensure that you are top of mind to your customer? We can't just rely on the strength of the fact that they know us, our brands have existed in existence for over 100 years and such like. So I think I may have answered it in a challenging way, but we actually look at it from that point of view.
Okay. I think if I can paraphrase and correct me if I'm completely wrong, but it sounds like it's a marriage between kind of awareness and relevance, right? So yes, you might be known as a brand, and that's important. Not trying to take away from brand building, but obviously the relevance of that, like you said, they might know you, but they don't know that they need something from you. It's about getting that kind of messaging right and being consistent with the right audience at the right time with the right message, right? And it's a little bit holy grail for digital marketers, but I think that's true to building trust and to building that relationship with consumer.
Yes, the right time, the right place is the essence of it. Yes.
Okay, thanks so much, Charles. Really appreciate the insight. Charles, I'm going to come back to you. Do you have any practical examples of brands that are possibly leading the way in terms of brilliant use of data in retail within South Africa, and something that the people on this call can learn a bit from?
Well, it depends who's on the call as to how much they're going to learn. But yeah, I think there's a very good case in point, and it's one that I'm very familiar with. But if we look at the Shoprite group of companies and the move that they made last year with the launch of Shoprite X, being one of the biggest retailers in Sub-Saharan Africa, they've realized the value of data in retail. And in order to truly drive data-led marketing efforts within the retail space, that's how Shoprite X came into fruition. It's just realizing that with this data, you're sitting on a gold mine, and how better to incorporate that data into your marketing efforts than realizing where all the touch points are. So I think that for me is definitely one of the diamonds in the crown in terms of realizing the power of data within a retail space. And another one that I'm sure is very familiar to most of us on this call is Discovery and the Discovery Group, and how they are so data-led in their process. Whether it be from Discovery Medical Aid to Discovery Insure to Discovery Bank to Vitality, they have so much data sitting within their organization that they use to cross-pollinate, to upsell, to cross-sell within their audience segments to identify what products are good for you. And the reason why this one springs to mind is because they called me yesterday and I felt like I was speaking to my best friend on the other side of the phone, and I realized, oh wait, it's because I've just recently interacted quite a lot with their banking app and Discovery Medical Aid. So that's a very strong use of data within their organization to build that trust, to make sure that they're catering towards our needs as the end user, but ultimately it's benefiting their business. So those are the two big brands that I look at within the South African context.
Thanks, Chelsea. And I think on a personal note, I'm kind of all in on Discovery. I've got a lot of their products, and it's always been a slight bugbear in some of the other brands' engagements where I've got multiple products and I'm kind of individually engaged. Like I'm a customer on this product, and you speak to me in that channel, and then I'm also a customer on another product, but the two don't seem to be related. I think Discovery are not perfect in that respect, but are getting better. And in some instances, they're too good at using my data. My exercise goal and my Vitality active rewards keep going up, and they're seeing that I'm being active, and they're just pushing me further and further. I'd like them to just ignore me for a bit and let me continue on a slightly more slothy way. But yeah, thanks, Charles. Very, very good insight. I think I'm going to come back to one which is possibly a bit open, and I think our panel had a few insights to share, but I think I'll start with Jade because you mentioned some stats on it. The question comes from Tebogo. To what extent is the online shopping surpassing physical mall visits? And what do you think is the future for the shopping outlook? Are consumers likely to gravitate to online shopping and abandon malls completely?
So I don't think so. I think there's some consumers like myself where I've pretty much at all costs tried to abandon the malls because it's just not my thing. But I think from a majority, and just because of how our demographics in South Africa is set up, I don't think that's going to happen in the foreseeable future. Just in terms of some numbers, is 2.8% of total retail revenue is driven online. And people are predicting this to grow to up to or potentially over 4% by the end of this year. So it's definitely growing really, really fast. It's like doubling almost year on year. But I think in terms of people actually abandoning malls completely, I really don't think that will happen in South Africa, just based on how the trends are looking and where people are moving. But I think what is definitely going to happen a lot more is that the two are going to really start to interact a lot more than they have been. So people will start doing research online, go buy in the shops, like we've seen that happen, but I think that's going to happen a lot more. But I think people are obviously after deals. We had a bit of an economic crisis as well due to the pandemic, so people really are looking for the best product at the lowest price, and I think that's where we're going to see a lot more engagement online. But I think what people really do value in South Africa from the research I've done is actually being able to see and feel and touch the product and actually experience it before they buy it. But there's also different parts of the industry where there is people buying online more. So that would be like consumer electronics is something that people have actually started buying online more than in the stores in some instances. So it really does depend on the market. Another interesting thing I also picked up in my research is that groceries is one of the parts of the industry that people have started buying online less since the pandemic, which I found quite surprising because I would have thought that people order to get delivered to their home because of the pandemic, but people have actually started buying groceries more in store. So I think it definitely is a case-by-case situation. But overall, definitely, I don't think the shops are going anywhere for now.
Thanks, Jade. Anyone else on the panel want to kind of add some thoughts into that?
I just from a grocery perspective. Oh, Charles, I don't know. You came trigger finger quickly. I think when it comes to the grocery side of things, I think the nature of how people are shopping for groceries has maybe changed. So that bigger bulk shopping, 100% they want to go in store, but the quick convenience grocery shopping, that behavior has changed. If I just want to get bread, milk, and fruits, there are apps out there, and I think those apps have been in a prime environment to thrive, and they really have taken off, and we can see it with the likes of Pick and Pay ASAP, 6060, Checker 6060 coming through, and there are a couple more competitors that are coming into the market. So how people are shopping and what they are shopping for and the volume at which they're shopping has changed, and that behavior then changes along with it and where they go to shop for those things. But Charles, I have a feeling, could definitely give some more insight there.
So I will agree with both what Jade and Chelsea are saying. So for us, it's not so much about one killing the other. It's actually about a complementary relationship. I always like to explain the nuanced difference between shopping and buying, that shopping certainly starts online, but as Paul said, but I quoted much earlier, the buying happens in store. Yes, of course, for some of our retailers that have e-commerce, we see some of it happening online. So it's actually about the marriage of the two rather than one overtaking the other.
Okay, very interesting. Thanks. Pranav, anything from your side?
Yeah, always take 5 seconds to find the mute button. But no, absolutely. I think Charles's perspective is probably going to be the most kind of authoritative, if you will, on this one, because he's been on both sides and now he's working with the brand itself. So I think it's a truer reflection of how brands are thinking about this. But maybe if I can kind of answer it slightly anecdotally, just to maybe complement what some of the very interesting numbers that Jade has shared, for example. My own sort of, again, personal prediction, not a professional recommendation, is that I don't think that store shopping is ever going to go away. It is going to be omni-channel, and the percentage to which it's going to be online and offline is going to be a function of a larger set of things, including sort of macroeconomic things like internet penetration, as well as more retailer-specific things like the kinds of offerings that you have, right? I think in the presentation, I'd mentioned something that I really believe in, which is that consumers ultimately if given the chance, consumers will decide how best they want to interact with your business. And that could involve going to your store and picking something up, which is the ultimate sort of immediacy, if you will. And then if it's all about convenience they care about, and if they're too busy, they can order something online. But there's always a third option of, picking up from a locker or picking it up from curbside if they're looking for grocery and all of that, right? And you have all of these different options that are available. And I think as brands, you need to be able to provide these options to your customers so that they can then decide what best is an option that suits with it. I think it's going to be a fairly equal sort of split across all of those different options, assuming most of our large businesses in South Africa are able to get to a point where they have strong offerings across all three fulfillment options. So that would be one. And I think the other thing I would say is that, again, maybe if we zoom out a little bit and talk about international brands, Amazon, which is the world's largest pure player, they started Amazon Fresh a couple of years ago, right? That wouldn't have happened because they just wanted to throw money at something. It's because they also believe that no matter how strong a foothold they have in the pure play e-commerce space, obviously within categories like grocery and a lot of other categories as well, consumers want to go into stores and get the look and feel of the product. And they might end up picking something up from the store. They might end up coming back and making a purchase online. But having that option available is ultimately what brands need to offer to consumers and let them make the choice.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic point, Pranav. Like when you've got the world's largest digital retailer or e-commerce player opening physical stores, I think it answers the question in itself that physical stores aren't going anywhere yet. Something that's kind of in line with that, and it's two questions that I'm going to combine in one. So I'm going to read both, and then I think I'm going to point it to you, Charles, because one was directed to you, but feel free to chip in anyone else in the panel. So the one comment was, given the digital migration trajectory, are marketing tools such as in-store promotions and activations a worthwhile marketing effort? And do you feel strongly that organizations should shift to online marketing data collection and do less of the on-the-ground customer engagements and data collection? And I think I'm kind of going to answer that question in that we've just kind of said it, that stores aren't going away. So then the follow-on question is, Charles, can you please share strategies on how data can be collected and used at point of sale? And if I can, as a moderator, kind of combine that in one question, the whole online to offline debate, how are you tackling that challenge? And can others on the panel give some input into that?
Thank you, Ron. You might just have to nudge me and keep me honest in terms of the first question, but you've partly answered it for me as well. One of the things that I actually wanted to add to the previous question, which I think in part answers this, a challenge for us is to think continuously about what the store of the future looks like. So if the journey is indeed starting online, as we now know, and they're ending up in the store, how can we best anticipate that some of the people that we may assume to have fallen off the purchasing journey offline are actually going to end up in the store, and how to best and seamlessly serve them when they end up in the store? But also it then leads itself directly into the second question, the in-store experience. We firmly have the view that there's going to be a marriage, my English words are running away from me, or business words for that matter, there's going to be a marriage in customers' experience that they come to expect between what is offered in a digital channel versus what they expect in the store. At the point of sale, one of the biggest challenges that we've had for a number of years when we want to implement solutions is that the operations teams want to get people as moving at the point of sale as fast as possible. Now, when you try to implement some solution in store, it may likely end up introducing some queues, which they do not want necessarily. That's what digital is there to do. So there are many digital solutions that you can implement in the store, such as self-service that enable self-servicing. I think an example such as Takealot at the hubs where they collect goods have implemented these very well, where we have tablets that are self-servicing that enable us to be self-servicing, inputting our details before proceeding to check out or to collection. So similar things can be implemented in the stores without necessarily embedding difficulties at checkout. I think you're on mute there.
I'm struggling to find the mute, just like Pranav. Thank you, Charles. That's great insight. I think I'm just conscious of time. We've got kind of 5 minutes left. So I'm going to ask for just a rapid fire kind of point. And I'm going to start with you, Charles, because you kind of touched on it in terms of mentioning the store of the future. So is there anything you want to add in terms of where do you see the South African retail industry in the next 3 to 5 years? Just kind of a one-liner top trend, and we'll go around the panel and then I'll close off.
I'll steal some of Pranav's words on there. It's about the stores becoming part fulfillment centers in the future. That's essentially it. It's no longer the full shopping experience, but if the journey started online, customers are coming to pick up in the store. It's partly becoming that, and having experience centers where customers can go to experience product versus to only just shop the product. That's where I will stop.
Okay, thank you. Pranav, your thoughts?
Perfect. I think the big challenge is going to be to try and summarize as succinctly and as effectively as Charles has done. But I think very, very similar to what Charles has been hinting at, right? I think when you talk about omnichannel, even though it is as much a buzzword as digital transformation is, it's not just about integrating data from a marketing perspective. It's also about creating the store of the future. And I think having options like scan and go, which is the ultimate consumer convenience, having digital shelves, which helps you optimize inventory management, and having a whole bunch of other things, in-store advertising, for example, right? And it's an additional way to generate and upsell more revenue as a retailer. So there's a lot of things that can be done from an omni-channel perspective that brings digital into stores, as much as people working in the digital domain think about integrating offline data and trying to quantify the impact of online marketing. So I think that's where the future is going to go. And I think my personal sort of stake on it is I think the future for South Africa is extremely optimistic. I'd worked with clients in the UK before, but obviously, if you haven't guessed, I'm from India, but the reason I wanted to move to South Africa was really because of this and the opportunity that I see in the region of working with retailers. So hopefully that's a little bit of credibility there to say that I put my what do you call it? What is the phrase?
The money where the mouth is, but in this case, you put the body where the work is, right?
That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank God. I don't know what I would have done without you, but that's exactly what it is. And that's sort of my personal outlook for the region as well.
Excellent, Pranav. Thank you very much. Chels, your thoughts?
Oh, I still want to smell a perfume. And I can't get that experience online. You can be as descriptive as you want in your product description, but I need to see it. I need to feel it. I need to sense it. So I think very much the future of shopping is the places that we go to will be to get the experience, which speaks to what Charles said, as much as it is a fulfillment for those that are looking for click and collect. But I don't think people are going to be going with the same level of intent and purposes. I'm going there for an experience. I want to feel the vibe. Okay, cool. I'm all good. Oh, I've done my pricing comparison. Look and feel, shop it online. But I think it's definitely going to be a blended experience as the way of the future, not just cut and dry, straight moving online.
Thanks, Chels. Jade, your final thoughts?
So, I mean, I agree with what everyone else says, and it's quite hard to add on to it. But I think where I see retail going in the next 3 to 5 years is more brands getting online stores. So I think a lot of brands still have that progress to make. So I think we'll definitely start seeing a lot more integration. And where I hope it goes is that more brands are able to offer that like true omni-channel experience. I think within South Africa, there's huge opportunity for it. Personally, I've seen very, very few brands. I have seen some brands do it quite well, but I've not seen many. But I think that there is definitely that opportunity for tying the two together really well, like making sure that whether you go to someone's store, you go to their website, you're getting pretty much the exact same experience and the exact same feeling from the brand. So that's where, I mean, definitely where I hope, and I think that brands can get there. I definitely think we have the potential and we have the skills within this country to do it. But I think once people start getting a really, really good online experience, especially the lower LSM demographic of South Africa, I think those people are still in a position where they don't fully trust online, especially when it comes to using like credit cards and all of that online. I think people are very untrusting of that. So I think once people start getting really good experiences online, it's going to grow already. So I think where online is right now is very much sitting in the top, like LSM 9 to 10 of South Africa. And I think once we're able to tap into the broader markets, it's really going to flourish, and we'll start seeing a lot more activity online as well.
Thanks, Jade. I think it's a really exciting time to be in kind of retail in this digital evolution, daunting and scary at times, but really exciting. We've got kind of 1 minute left, so please don't drop off just yet because we're going to be posting some links. But I just want to acknowledge the engagement in the call. Thank you so much. And I know that we haven't got to all of the questions, so please reach out to the respective teams or to our marketing team, and we'll try address those if we can. But in closing, I just want to Neve touched on it in her intro around our global event that's happening on the 17th of March. And I'm now torn between going and celebrating Paddy's Day and attending this, but hopefully you'll make some time, or you can watch the recording. But it's really talking about digital strategies or successful strategies for a new era of e-commerce. And there's some really nice guest speakers there. I know Mel's going to drop the link in the chat now for registration. And there's an exclusive presentation from the latest member of the Incubeta family, which is Incubeta Maze 1, which is a full service marketplace agency. And we talked about kind of Amazon and the growing hold that they're taking on the e-commerce play. It'd be very interesting to hear the Maze 1 take on all of that. And then lastly, we do really value feedback in terms of these sessions. So a lot of effort and time goes into curating and putting together the stuff. But obviously, if we've missed the mark, we want to hear that, right? So please, we're going to share a questionnaire as well. It probably takes about 2 minutes to fill it out, but any feedback, positive or negative, please add that in. We really want to keep these kind of engagements and keep them engaging and relevant and bring value to everyone. So please give us that feedback as well. And I think that's it. We're 1 minute over time. Thank you for staying with us. If there are any questions, reach out. We'll be in touch. But I think for now, we can close that off. Thanks so much, everyone.